Hello again. Welcome back to Honest Tax Returns. This is part 3 of 6. It is presented to the American people in December 2016. In this section, we're going to talk about the Internal Revenue Code, and we're going to concentrate on the word internal and try to figure out what that really means. Part 3 conclusions I'll bring up front is that the United States, as used in the tax code, means the District of Columbia and excludes the 50 states of the Union. The Internal Revenue Code only applies to federal subjects, that is, persons, property, and privileges internal to, domestic to, within the United States or within the District of Columbia. Persons, property, and rights within the 50 states of the Union are external to, non-domestic, or foreign without the United States or without the District of Columbia, unless specifically made liable. This presentation might be a little bit boring, so please watch part 1 to see examples of honest tax returns which lawfully reduce federal tax burden. If you're confused, uncertain, or serious about studying the tax laws, then keep watching. Also, if the IRS comes for you, you might want to be prepared, so I would recommend doing your homework. By the way, they will come after you if your tax return betrays any weakness which they can exploit. Remember, the IRS, like everybody else, they go after low-hanging fruit. So if you don't know what you're doing, and they can tell that you don't know what you're doing, they might want to add on extra fines because they know in the end you'll end up paying them. So be very careful and tread carefully and make sure you actually understand this information. Title 26, United States Internal Revenue Code. The word key emphasis is on the word internal, and we're going to try to explain what the word internal means. So what is internal? Well, you go to the law dictionary, you look up internal, and it'll go straight to the word internal revenue. So read the definition of what internal revenue means. It means, basically, it's domestic with respect to the United States, as distinguished from foreign. Now, what exactly does that mean? What is domestic? At 26 U.S.C. 7701, the term domestic is defined. And with respect to a corporation or partnership, it means it's defined to be created or organized in the United States or of any state. Now the question is, what is the, and the term foreign is also defined in the same section right after it. The term foreign is anything which is not domestic, okay? So the key definition of domestic includes the United States. So what exactly is the United States? Well, we look down at the definitions, and the definitions say the term United States, when used in a geographic sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. Now, right now you're probably saying, okay, well, that doesn't give me any new information until you figure out this definition, which is the term state. The term state is defined to include the District of Columbia, where such construction is necessary to carry out the provisions of this title. Now let's be very thorough and put down what those statutes say for our initial analysis. The words state include the District of Columbia. The words United States include the states and D.C. And so by that, using the idea that the word includes excludes everything else, the United States includes the District of Columbia. In other words, the United States excludes the 50 states of the Union. That is a surprising conclusion in our initial analysis, but is this true? And I'd like to show some evidence for it. We're going to show that the United States includes the District of Columbia, the United States excludes the 50 Union states, and the evidence we'll present are the Internal Revenue Code itself, the Supreme Court decisions, United States Code, the Legislative Council and Congressional Research Service, and the Executive Report on Jurisdiction and the Constitution. So those are the source evidence, and let's begin. First, let's see the Internal Revenue Code. In the the left-hand column, we have one set of codes, and the right-hand column, we have a second set of codes. Notice that the top that code, the term state includes Alaska and Hawaii. And then on the other side, in the same statute, okay, but just a different version, the the term state includes only the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, and American Samoa. So, question is, what happened to Alaska and Hawaii? Well, the first set of codes was from 1954, and the codes on the right-hand side are the current edition. Now, let's go to the code from 1939. It also states that the state includes Alaska and Hawaii, and that the United States mean the states and Alaska and Hawaii and the District of Columbia. So, why did the IRC change in 1954 and 1939 and to the current edition? And what happened to Alaska and Hawaii? Well, the answer is in 1959, Hawaii and Alaska became states of the Union and therefore were no longer within the quote, territory over which the sovereignty of the United States extends. That particular phrase is from a Supreme Court decision, which we'll see in a minute. Therefore, Alaska and Hawaii were removed from the IRC definition of the term state. And by that, I'm giving evidence that the word state excludes the 50 states of the Union. Now, another piece of evidence I want to show is this letter. This letter is a letter to Mr. John Randall from Barbara B. Keneally, who is a member of Congress. I give credit to the Federal Zone, which is a free book that's downloadable online by Andrew Paul Mitchell of supremelaw.org. He did an extremely good and thorough analysis on jurisdiction regarding what it means to be in the United States and what the states mean. But anyway, let's highlight some elements of this letter. And it says, according to the Legislative Council and Congressional Research Service, the term state in 26 U.S.C. 3121 specifically includes only the named U.S. territories and possessions of the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and Guam and Samoa, American Samoa. Now, those of us who study this code knows that 3121 and 7701 have nearly identical language and therefore must also be similarly construed. So anyway, that's evidence that shows that the 50 states are excluded from the meaning of the word state. Another piece of evidence I want to show is the code itself. We're going to go to 26 U.S.C. 7701C, where we find that they gave a specific custom definition for the words includes and including. The term includes and including, when used in a definition contained in this title, shall not be deemed to exclude other things, otherwise within the meaning of the term defined. What they're saying here is that if you have a set A and its A includes A, B, and C, and then the set D, E, and F are not excluded because A, B, and C and D, E, and F are similar. However, set 1, 2, and 3 is excluded because they're not otherwise within the meaning of the term defined. Now let's compare that with Black's Law 4th edition dictionary definition of the word include and including. So the word include means to hold as in an enclosure, to attain, to shut up, to contain, to confine within, to comprise, embrace, involve, etc. It means you put a circle around the things that you are considering and you exclude everything else. However, the word including, even though it's basically the same words, it's just different tense, may, according to context, express an enlargement and have the meaning of and or in addition to, or merely specify a particular thing already included within the general words theretofore used. Okay, that's a mouthful. Indeed, the IRC's definition of includes and including are expansile, as various government counsel have said over the years, but it clearly goes no further than from the word include to the word including. whatever you include doesn't exclude things. Excludes everything that's not otherwise within the general meaning of the things defined. Okay. Therefore, using that concept that includes, excludes, we can also, we just remember the word includes, excludes. What other evidence do we have for that concept? How about the Supreme Court case Hellring versus Morgans, where it says, where it basically defines the word means and the word includes. Okay, so means is defined to be interchangeable equivalents. Okay, and the word verb, they define it to import a general class, some of whose particular instances are those specified in the definition. And also Mies versus Keen. So it is axiomatic that the statutory definition of the term excludes unstated meanings of that term. So if you have, includes something, then again, it excludes something that's not written down. And then also there's a legal maxim. It's called inclusio unis est exclusio alteris, meaning the inclusion of one is the exclusion of the other. And also we saw the Black's Law Dictionary. So if we take those dictionary and Supreme Court decisions and also the IRC definitions into account, we take the word state, which includes the District of Columbia, and the word state to include the District of Columbia, and we just use our brain. We come down with the fact that the word state includes the places named and excludes the 50 union states because they're not otherwise within the meaning of the term that's defined. You don't see any other state in there. Hawaii and Alaska got taken out, as we said earlier, because they became states of the union. Okay, so based on 7701C, which is a definition of includes and excludes, based on the other definitions of 3121 and 7701, which are definitions for states, the word state definitely excludes the 50 states of the Union. Okay, now we're going to show that the Internal Revenue Code applies to the United States and excludes the 50 states of the Union. Again, but first, let's back up one bit and answer the question: what exactly is the United States? Because that term gets thrown around quite a bit. The United States is actually a very specific term, and it's defined at Hooven, Allison Company versus Evatt, 1945. The term United States, as the Supreme Court has said, means the name of a sovereign occupying the position analogous to that of other sovereigns in the family of nations. So that would be like United States, Russia, China, Germany, England, France, etc. Number two, the United States is defined as the territory over which the sovereignty of the United States extends. Now, you all know that this is a tautology, but we'll skip that concept for now and go to the third definition, which is that the United States means the states which are united by and under the Constitution, and in those would be like California, Oregon, Washington, Texas, etc. And those would be the Union states. So which United States does the Internal Revenue Code apply to? Well, let's find out. Let's see what it says. We're going to look at the code 7701, A9, and A10. The term United States includes the states and the District of Columbia. And then the next line says the state shall include the District of Columbia. So you add those together and you get the United States includes only the states and the District of Columbia, and the term state includes the District of Columbia. And so you conclude, or I conclude anyway, the United States is equal to the District of Columbia and excludes the 50 states of the Union. Okay, where else can we find additional supporting evidence? Well, United States, let's look at the United States Constitution at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And it says right there, Congress, meaning Congress of the United States, have power to exercise exclusive jurisdiction over such district not exceeding 10 miles squared. What district are they talking about? They're talking about the District of Columbia. And then further down, they also said they have like authority over all places. Places is a constitutional word, and it's defined to be places purchased by the consent of the legislature um, of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, such as post offices. So places are important. So the United States is equal to the District of Columbia and excludes the 50 Union states. Okay. All right. Another place we can find the same concept being repeated is the United States Code. So at 4 USC 71, also listed at 61 stat. That's the statutory laws of the United States, statutes at large. Number 463, we will read that all parts of the territory of the United States included within the present limits of the District of Columbia shall be the present seat of the government of the United States. And then further down it says all offices attached to the seat of government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere, except as otherwise expressly provided by law. Now, when they say expressly provided by law, it can be contract law as well. So, what is an office? What is the IRS but an office attached to the seat of government? Yeah, it only operates in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere, as it states. But if somehow you contracted with them, then they can operate on against you as well, and we'll show you how that happens. So the United States is equal to the District of Columbia and excludes the 50 states of the Union. We continue to come to that conclusion. Another another piece of information which supports that conclusion is the report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas within the United States, submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to President Dwight D. Eisenhower in June 1957. I'll let you read this if you want, but it scarcely needs to be said that the federal government possesses no legislative jurisdiction over any area within a state. Okay. Again, moving on with further evidence, let's show 3 Supreme Court cases. Okay, 3 Supreme Court cases. It's Caja versus United States versus E.C. Knight Company, and Foley Brothers Inc. versus Filardio. And they all say that basically the laws of Congress have only force in the District of Columbia and other places. Remember, places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. And this talks about police powers and criminal prosecutions, and it is a power originally and always belonging to the states, not surrendered by them to the general government, nor directly restrained by the Constitution of the United States, and essentially exclusive. And also the legislation of Congress, unless a contrary intent appears, is meant to apply only within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. What is the territorial jurisdiction of the United States? Again, check at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Now, what about the intent? Well, you say the intent hasn't been defined. Well, I think it's very clearly defined because the intent is internal revenue. The intent is about domestic corporations and domestic persons and United States persons. It all says that in the code. Okay, so that is actually the intent, and the intent actually includes the subject into or confines the subject into the District of Columbia. Okay, let's see. Did you find any confusion while reading 7701 and 3121? Can Congress be more clear, or are they just not good writers? Well, let's look at a comparison of statutes. The statute that we've been looking at, which is 7701, it says the term United States, when used in a geographic sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. That's kind of misleading because it didn't really tell you what states are. It hid the definition of state somewhere else. And if you just looked at it from, let's say, the vantage point of Main Street America, one would think that it means the 50 states and the District of Columbia. Now let's compare that with 26 USC, which is under the same title, 4611 and 4612, where a petroleum tax is imposed. Okay, so in there it says the United States means the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, etc. So there's a vast difference between how the code is written at 7701 and how the code is written at 4611. Is there an intent to defraud? I'll let you answer that question for yourself. Also, if you think that we're just playing with words here, I want to remind you that the law means what it says. And here's a Supreme Court decision, Russell versus United States, where Congress includes particular language in one section of a statute but omits it in another section of the same act. It is generally presumed that Congress acts intentionally and purposely in the disparate inclusion or exclusion. Okay, so they really mean what they say. It's up to you to interpret it, and if you make the presumptions that Main Street makes, then the error is really on your part, not theirs. Part 3 conclusions. Number 1, United States means the District of Columbia. It excludes the 50 states of the Union. The Internal Revenue Code only applies to federal subjects. That is, again, persons, property, and privileges internal to, domestic to, within the United States or within the District of Columbia. Persons, property, and rights within the 50 states of the Union are external to, non-domestic, or foreign without the United States or without the District of Columbia unless specifically made liable. To see practical examples of how these concepts are applied on IRS forms, please watch Part 1. The rest of this 6-part video series will go in depth to provide the theoretical support for the paperwork shown in Part 1. Thank you very much for watching. Please share, like, and comment. You have a duty to be honest, to obey the law, and to keep your brother from harm and injustice. So please share this with another American. End of Part 3. Thank you for watching.